Thanks for coming tonight. My name is Charity Tews. As I put in the chat, I live in Philadelphia. I've had the pleasure of collaborating with Raul for the last 20 years and recently helped launch Veerens, which is a 501c3 arm to support scaling the restorative forestry work by expanding the funding options. And I will pass it over to my colleague, Rebecca.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rebecca Baum. I've been working with Raul and Forever Redwood for about the past 5 years. I'm a writer, so I do content marketing and I manage the email campaigns, including a similar outreach in 2019 to purchase a parcel of forest land and restore it. I also worked with Charity on the launch of Veerens, which is the social impact arm of Forever Redwood. Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Thanks, Rebecca. Hi, my name is Raul Hernandez. I'm the founder and CEO of Forever Redwood. I started Forever Redwood in 1995 because I was worried about the way the forestry was being managed worldwide. I'm still worried about it. It hasn't gotten much better. And we started doing hands-on forest restoration work in Annapolis, California in 1995. There's a small video that we're going to show that basically explains it. But the bottom line is the land forests want to regenerate themselves. And it's just a matter of working with the forest instead of against it. And magic happens. And we've done some incredible work. And I hope to convey that clearly today. I mean, the forests naturally want to recover their ancient form. But once humans have come in and really hit it hard, like they've done all through the California redwoods and through most of the planet, unfortunately, it requires heavy restoration work, hands-on work that really takes a lot of effort. And we've perfected that since mid-1990s when we started. And the bottom line is you want to take care of the soil. You want to do the opposite of what was done or what is still being done in most parts, which is take out the lower quality trees and leave mostly the higher quality trees. Cut a limited amount so that the forest is growing a lot more lumber than you're cutting. You need to cut a little bit of lumber so that you can pay for the bills. But the way we do it, most of our lands now have 2.5 times more lumber, more standing timber, more carbon sequestered than they did when we started in the 90s. And they look a lot better. There's a lot more wildlife. There's a lot of details that are involved in it. I wrote a book about it. It's on our website. But the basic idea is to do the opposite of industrial forestry, do restoration work. All right, so we're going to start by talking a little bit about what we've done in the forest, hands-on, because that's the main thing that differentiates us from, an environmental organization that's raising money for political awareness or whatever it is. We're about hands-on, actually doing the work. I started doing forest restoration work in 1994. And this parcel, this Fuller Creek parcel, it's 83 acres that's been under our management for now 26 years. And it was a mess. The land was heavily logged in 1964. And when we got there, you couldn't see 5 feet in front of you. There was just limbs everywhere. Which is the case with most forests these days, where they've taken all the big trees and then small trees have come up. They're competing with one another. They're all not able to grow anywhere near their potential because where there used to be 1 tree, now there's 20. So we go in and we take out a lot of these lower quality trees that can't make it anyway, try to choose the best ones, the healthiest ones, and leave those to grow. Cut everything down to the ground, lower the fire hazards, limb the branches, and visually it transforms the property. But the trees are liberated. They start growing a little bit faster and the forest looks better. The songbird populations increase. It's a complete transformation. And I'm lucky enough to be able to watch these lands change over the course of nearly 3 decades. And you have to see it. It's hard to explain. But the chart at least gives you a mathematical understanding how the lands have increased over time in terms of the amount of lumber, standing timber that they hold, which timber, after all, is carbon. It's mostly carbon. And that's what carbon sequestration is all about, increasing these numbers. If you can increase the numbers, you're sequestering carbon. But we've done 2 harvests on these lands over the past 25 years, 2 harvests. And yet we still have almost 2.5 times more volume in the forest after we've done that. That's the key. That's what restoration forestry is about. Sustainable forestry, which is a term that's thrown around a lot and most people are familiar with it. What sustainable forestry does is maintains the forest pretty much as a young forest in perpetuity. That's better than clear cutting and starting over again, but it doesn't restore anything. You've got to cut a lot less than the forest is naturally growing, so the trees are getting bigger over time. That's the bottom line mathematically. But biologically, the biodiversity, the way the forest changes, the way the animals respond, it's completely different. We have eagles now nesting on these lands. We never had any eagles 25 years ago. Anyway, I could just talk about it endlessly. I'll let, you want to run the video, Charity? These lands in 1994, when we purchased them, had 7,000 board feet to the acre. We harvested twice over the last 25 years, and yet today the land has 15,000 board feet to the acre, well over 100% more, even after the harvest and the thinnings. So we're going to stop talking and just show you visually how the forest looks today and how it's going to look after the thinning that I'm going to do myself over the next couple hours. If you have questions, of course, you can email me or reach me through the website. Thank you. We want to talk about what's at stake right now. I mean, you know, we've all been blasted with this Glasgow stuff and all the politics about global warming and what they're going to do. And in the end, it was just a bunch of great speeches and little else. And if you're interested in doing something, we encourage you to help us. I'm really excited about this property in Reeves Canyon. Why? Because we've been operating on small scales, buying 40 acres, 80 acres over the last 25 years, because that's all we've been able to do. This piece is nearly a square mile. It's a mile by like 2/3 of a mile. It's a huge piece of the forest in Northern California. It's high lands. It's 1,500 to 2,500 foot elevation, redwood and Doug fir forest. It was an ancient forest. It was never touched until 1953. And back then, the ethos was take as much as you can. So the land was hit really hard. Pretty much every tree that had any value was cut. But then nothing happened. The land has been left alone for 68 years. It's been owned by the same family. The son of the logger now is retiring. He's getting up there and his health isn't great. And he wants to sell it. And we're competing with a timber company, basically, that's going to take it and whack it the way, which is the normal business practice. Oh, there's a lot of timber on it, let's cut it. So what we're trying to do is put together a few like-minded folks that want to own it. We're not necessarily looking for charitable contribution or other avenues, but charity convinced me that we should, for those who are interested in making a charitable contribution, that's a second option. So the idea is to try to get shares at $5,000 a share, see who's interested, how many shares you'd like to raise. We need to raise a total of $750,000 to buy the property, start the restoration work, fix the roads, fix all the erosion issues, and get that property looking much better and growing in the right direction. and save it from the usual. What would happen if we don't buy it is it's going to be cut at a 60% rate. 60% of the volume is going to be cut. What does that mean? It means most of the big trees are going to go. Any 3-4 foot diameter trees that are on the property are going to be gone. Most of the 2-foot trees are also going to be gone. So you're going to be left with just a bunch of tiny trees, and most of the carbon is going to get converted to lumber. Restoration forestry is key to global cooling. It's key. It's one of the main levers that has to be engaged. It's not discussed. They talk about carbon offsets and setting aside parks, but working forests are the bulk of the forests of the earth. Most of the forests of the earth are working forests, not parks, not preserves. So those working forests need to be restored while yielding some lumber for the society around it, because you can't afford to turn everything into a park. And this example, this land, if it was turned into a park, it would cost many millions of dollars. For 750,000, we could save this land, pay it off over time, and restore it completely. What'll happen 100 years from now? This land right now has close to 20,000 board feet to the acre, more than the lands in the Fuller Creek video, because it's been sitting for 68 years. 100 years from now, instead of 20,000 board feet to the acre, it'll have 50 to 60,000. And that's an old growth forest. It'll be incredible. And we're looking for people who want to leave this for their great-great-grandkids. We don't want to sell it. We're not going to put debt on it. We just want to manage it long-term and keep it in the family.
Just to clarify on the scenario, so one of the reasons that we kind of framed this as a brainstorm is we really want to hear from you all, which you can do. There's not as many of us, so you can feel free to unmute yourself when we open it up for the brainstorm, or drop into the chat. But right now, so there are a lot of, basically, we're really open to your ideas, your point of view, and what you think would make this potentially work for you or other folks in your network. We've come to it, and Raul already mentioned this, but we think in our minds, in terms of the kind of infrastructure that we have, we see two different scenarios. And one scenario is via Verens, folks can donate to the land and then get a tax write-off. And, anyone could, again, kind of probably the $5,000 mark, but really we'll take any donation, I think, in general. But that would be a philanthropic kind of approach to the contribution of the land. The other approach is this $5,000 a share approach. So you could buy one share, or someone could contribute 20 shares or 40 shares. There's no limit. And then how that would essentially work is there's a ton that would need to be figured out based on how much we raise and how many people invest. But essentially, the way the restoration model works that Raul mentioned is that every 15 years, we're going to thin. The restoration work of like reducing the fuels to reduce the catastrophic fire risks, to address trees that are competing for sunlight, and therefore inhibiting growth so that the trees can't grow, that all of that restoration work will have to happen in the first 5 years. And part of that restoration work will be removing some of the trees, which is kind of the model that the for-profit arm, Forever Redwood, that many of you are familiar with, and the reason you're here tonight, will potentially purchase some of those trees that are removed during the restoration portion of the first 5 years. Those funds will then go into paying down the rest of the debt of whatever we don't raise. So there wouldn't be a dividend for anybody who wanted to go into that model until the second thinning, which would be 20% 15 years later. And then there could be an actual financial return on your investment. And the return would be related to how much, how many shares you have. or you could decide you don't want the dividend and you want to have that invested in a different parcel of land. If you want to share or ask any questions or share what would make this work for you or any thoughts you have about it, you can either come on to the conversation or drop it into the chat.
A couple questions. One, is there water going through that 480 acres?
Yeah, there's a year-round stream and there's several seasonal streams.
And is there access to it? What's the access like to that property?
It's a county road that comes off of Highway 101. It's a gravel county maintained road for about 10 miles west of Highway 101 till you get to the property. And then the property roads they're not in great shape. That's part of the work that we have to do, is lower the erosion that's coming off these roads by putting in rolling dips and water bars and all that stuff.
I guess the first thought that goes through my mind when I hear this is just like how much, being able to go to that place obviously is going to be like such a huge inspiration to people to contribute. I mean, there may be many people who are willing to contribute just because they know what it is already. But I'm just wondering if that's part of the plan, is to get people out there, and if there's a way to do that, and if that could happen in continuity too going forward, like some kind of way that.
Good question. We're not going to develop the land in terms of putting in cabins or anything like that. We want to keep it wild. It's mountain lion country, it's bear country, it's eagle country. The neighbors have thousands of acres. One neighbor is 8,000 acres, another one is 6,000 acres. I mean, this isn't, a bunch of 40-acre parcels with everybody with their dogs and everybody out in the woods. This is wild lands. And so we can definitely have people come out. We can't, if we have 50 owners, we can't say, hey, go whenever you want, because it'll be chaos. But yeah, definitely. If we do this between 5 or 10 of us, or even if it's more, we can say, hey, you just let us know when you want to come out. We're not going to say no. We just have to have some order to it. You need a special vehicle to get around. I mean, this is mountain land. Some of the slopes are literally like this. I have a Can-Am Defender 6x4 UTV that can handle the property. But if you want to hike, this will get you in shape.
Raul.
We're not gonna take anyone's money until we've got a deal. So what we're looking for is commitments. We want to know that we've got the backing. Okay, then I can go forward and say, hey, we're ready to put down $500,000 to secure this deal. And then at that point, I'll say, hey, everybody, I need the commitments now. We're going to close escrow in 30 days. So it's all contingent on first having the full support behind us, right? Right now, we've got maybe $80,000 committed. We don't need to get to 750, but 750 is the ideal number, because if we don't get there, the stress is on me to come up with the difference. So if we get to 750, we got enough to buy the land, start the restoration work, get the roads fixed, take care of the bureaucratic stuff with the government. We have to get a non-industrial timber management plan filed, which grandfathers you in to do forest restoration work, supposedly in perpetuity. And over the coming decades, the regulatory environment is going to get crazy, because we're going to start to panic with what's happening with the climate. So we want to get whatever regulatory hurdles handled now in perpetuity. You don't want to file a timber harvest plan that's only good for a couple of years. You want to do a non-industrial timber management plan. Part of the money is to take care of that. It lays out how you're going to restore the land, what you can do and what you can't do in perpetuity. So you get that plan approved and then you move forward. So all the money is in case we get the deal. If we don't get the deal, we'll go to another one. Believe me, there's plenty of forest lands all over the planet that need to be restored. There's no lack of them.
But just to answer the question between, there's a big gap between 750 and 2.1 to 2.5 million. And
okay.
Earlier we were talking about Forever Redwood's business model. essentially, which was conceptualized and designed to be able to utilize the minimally thinned trees from the lands to build the furniture at Forever Redwood. And therefore, in terms of the question around risk, Robin, right? Like if we come up with 750, but it's actually a little over 2 million, what's the risk that we're going to lose our money? And so this method of selling in this first 5 years, when we do the restoration work, of selling the usable lumber to Forever Redwood at market value would pay down our debt. So that addresses that risk. And Forever Redwood, Raul can talk about it, but is growing, and the demand for lumber to produce the beautiful pergolas and the furniture that some of you have is strong. And so that would help us ensure that we get it. But I don't know if you want to add to it, Raul?
A little bit. What makes this proposal completely different from donating money to the Sierra Club or to the Save the Redwoods League or anything like that, right? And that's that we've developed a value-added product line. We have a value-added product line that takes every one of these precious pieces of wood and converts it into something that's worth a lot more than raw lumber. Why are the forest lands all whacked and cut to the maximum allowable or even more? Because lumber is kept as a commodity. It's sold at a commodity price, which is ridiculously low. And so there isn't enough money in logging, so they have to cut as much as possible. But if you have a value-added product like we do with Forever Redwood, instead of selling a 6x6 timber to a mill or sell it retail for $2 a board foot or $2.50 a board foot, we put it into a pavilion where it's worth $15 or $16 a board foot. And then suddenly you've got a model that will fund further restoration work. And that's easier said than done. That's taken me 25 years to get here. We've got several hundred acres that we've restored over the past 25 years, but it's a slow process. We're trying to scale it now. We're going to probably do 15 million, somewhere between 15 and 20 million next year in sales. And in order to do that, we have to buy about $4 million worth of lumber. And the last thing I want to do is buy lumber on the open market, because you're supporting bad forestry. So my main motivation for buying this piece is that we won't have to buy any lumber from the open market. If we buy this land in Reeves Canyon, it's going to generate enough money to pay off the property over the next 5 years. It will, because we're paying retail for the lumber, because Forever Redwood is going to pay retail for it. I hope that answers the question. Did I cover it?
Yeah, you did. And we're going to go to Warren next. Go ahead, Warren.
Yeah, hi, everybody. I'm one of the co-founders of Forever Redwood, and it's been a very interesting restorative journey. and so this, why I'm going to buy a few shares, because this represents, we've been restoring, the biggest piece we had was 100 acres, and restoring, this is, 5 times bigger, and it will serve as a template to, show the bigger logging companies that, look, we can do this on a bigger piece, and we're going to double the standing timber, even with, after doing a cut like this, that's smaller than what they do. It's going to show them that, this is a template of what they can do, not just, the big logging companies, but landowners around. And this is located right in the center of the Redwood area of California. So it runs from Santa Cruz all the way up to the border, and it's right in the middle. So it's close enough for everybody to come and see the work that we're doing. And I'm just excited that, it's going to help multiply and teach other, big and small landowners how to do this work. So that's my input.
Thanks, Warren.
Any other questions, thoughts, ideas about, what would make this attractive to you?
Is there I'm kind of new to like the forming of the companies, that sort of thing. So are there any like rights that go along with, buying a share, voting rights, that kind of thing? And I guess long-term, like you want it to stay in perpetuity. So, if you had enough shares out there, I don't know where the voting, would go. So
Dan, you have the right to get a chainsaw and go to work in the woods with me. And try not to hurt yourself.
okay.
I mean, look, this isn't about, for me, this is my life's work. Is all I want to do. I don't even care how it's set up. I just want to raise the money and get the work done and then go on to the next project until I drop dead, because I can't think of anything else to do with my time. I work like 80 hours a week. If there's something that you want, I mean, we just thought we'd set it up as a C corp, set it up as a California C corp. And we thought 500 acres, 500 shares. So you're basically, for an acre, you're buying a share, right? You're buying it for a share, you're buying an acre. But I mean, look, this is a humble, small affair. We're just trying to do it with a few people that think like us, that want to do this.
I would think this has great appeal to grandparents. That is why I would buy shares. I'm not sure where we go out and find grandparents, but there are but you understand what I'm saying. In other words, I think that if this is sold, I'm not sure I really want to use the word sold, but presented might be a better term. This is presented as a economic and planet-saving gift for your grandkids. That's how I would propose the project. It's why I would buy shares.
Philip, you're hired as the marketing manager.
But no, that's what I would do. That's how I would. This is for your grandkids in multiple ways. You can say to your grandkids, you own some forest.
Yeah.
You are helping the planet. I don't know.
And the thing we want to do with it is make sure that it gets to be debt free and it stays debt free. And then anyone who owns it can come and visit it and see, and hike on it, camp on it. I mean, it's a huge piece of property. You can get lost there if you don't know what you're doing. I mean, I've gotten lost several times. But yeah, you're in charge, Philip, of the grandfather outreach program. I agree with you. I think you're spot on. And look, when we did the job in Fuller Creek in 2018, 2019, I think it was just 4 investors in the end that put up the money. It was a 42 acre piece, but 2 of them were grandparents. 2 of them were grandpas. So you're spot on. And one of them told me directly, he said, I'm doing this for my 3 grandkids. So you're
that's right.
I know you have Jan, you have your hand up. Just one second. I wanted to just mention that, like, the voting rights, or, after this call, the point of having more of a community connection and asking you what you need is so that we can set it up like that. The way that it's set up is going to completely depend on how many of us there are, what we want, and then we'll structure it that way as more of like a cooperative approach. And then I also just wanted to circle back to something that Galen said about kind of like the draw to actually being on the land, going to the land. And I think that there's, Raul mentioned that there's definitely access and ways to get to the land. There are also other parcels that we're looking at that would have like a greater recreational attributes for developing other funding streams like glamping or whatever, but this wouldn't be that. This is more about the restoration work, visiting it, coming to do restoration work, but not necessarily any development. But there are other opportunities, Galen, that we could explore too, for different properties.
The owner of this property owns another 620 acres just east of it. And that piece, we could put a cabin on it. That could be timeshare for everybody to come, because it's really an 1,100 acre ranch. It's just too much to try to put the whole thing together. And he was gracious enough to split it into 2 parts. But the other piece is there, and that has development potential more so than this piece. So, I mean, everything's open. We just need to come up with a plan that works for everybody. We're flexible. This is really about the forestry work and about doing something to keep us from going crazy. Thanks for taking
just real quick, Raul. Ursula, I saw that you came off of mute. Did you want to say anything? There you are.
Yes, yeah. So if you can walk us really quickly through the optimum time frame again, what should happen from right now on, which is the time frame for the acquisition of the parcel, which would, as an optimum, happen when?
So optimally, you know, tomorrow I'll get emails and 10 people are committing to raise $750,000 and we're ready to go. I will reach out to this seller and say, hey, we've got the money, let's get this done. The price might change because maybe the timber company offered a little bit more, but pay a little bit more, whatever we have to do, get it into escrow. And then once we have it in escrow, say, hey, look, we're going to close 45 days from now. We're going to close Christmas Eve or, you know, January 10th, whatever it is. As soon as that happens, as soon as we put it in escrow, we're going to move ahead with the paperwork with the state to get permission to work. You can't do most forestry work without permission from the state. They got to see a plan, a detailed plan. So then we would start the work in April. The work in the woods would start in April.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then it would be ongoing nonstop for 5 years. And you can come out and see it anytime you'd like. You know, you could come out and see it before we start. So you could see what a mess, well, how it's looking right now, and then watch the transformation, because we're going to be working little by little. We're going to work like 100 acres a year. So you'll be able to come in next year and say, wow, look at this compared to this, right? And you'll see the transformation right before your eyes. It's pretty astounding. And it feels, you gotta feel it. You gotta be there and feel it. Okay, all right.
I wanna be mindful that we're going over. So we will take all of these thoughts. We'll definitely be in touch. I'm sure there'll be more digital events. And thank you all very much.
Thanks, everyone.
We'll be in touch with everybody, right, Rebecca?
Yes. We'll
Great
send a
job,
follow-up
Charity,
email.
Rebecca. Great job.
Thank you.
Nice to meet everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Let's do it again.
Thanks, Warren. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, guys.